Hi.
Welcome to The Stand. Today I have my husband Joe joining me because together we are going to be sharing Lee's NICU story. If you weren't aware, it is September, which is NICU Awareness Month, which is why we're both matching.
Green.
Green is the color to signify NICU awareness. And if you didn't know what NICU stands for, it is
Neonatal Intensive Care Unit or Newborn Intensive Care Unit, and that's, what it sounds like.
Mm-hmm. It's an intensive care unit for babies that were just born. I have two disclaimers for you to help me feel calm in going through this story with all of you. One is when I am nervous and have trouble coping with something, sometimes I can laugh. It does not mean that I think this situation is funny in any way. I may smile a lot, but I will try not to.
It's also important to try to stay positive on everything.
That's true too. The other disclaimer is that I may be sharing footage or pictures here and there of Lee's stay at the NICU, and I wanted to give that disclaimer because some of the pictures may be a little graphic. If that's something that is hard for you to handle, I want to give you that warning here now. And of course, if you're not interested in a NICU story, then that's okay. You don't need to continue watching. This may be a little bit of a long one, so sit back, relax, and just join us as we share our story about our son, who is now a wonderful 3.5-year-old rambunctious boy who had a few hiccups at the beginning. Okay, so let's set the backdrop and the background. My pregnancy was low risk. I was 28 years old, no complications at all during pregnancy, no red flags that came up. Lee was full term. I went into labor late night, the night before his due date, and then early morning of his due date, I did go to the hospital, stayed there for a couple hours before they decided I was kind of stalling and not really progressing and it would be better if I went home. So we did that even though a storm was coming and we were nervous.
Snowstorm, blizzard.
Yes, middle of January. And it was good though. It was good to go home, spend a little bit more time together with our parents. And then we went back again the following day, the day after his due date in the morning. Mm-hmm. And then within 5 hours he was born. I pushed for about 2.5 hours, which I think is like kind of on the long side, but also, yeah. But also they said it's kind of an average for your first labors or your first delivery, so it definitely was intense, felt long, but we got through it.
You did.
And the biggest point to make of all of that is that when they broke my water, because they had to break my water, for some reason my water never breaks on its own, no matter, even if I'm 10 centimeters dilated, they did notice meconium in the water. And
meconium is a thick, black, tarry-like substance, which is actually the baby's first poop. And it's thick and sticky too, so that explains why it'll be a problem in a minute when we go further in the story.
Right. So he was born and it was so exciting. The delivery was so intense for me. I think I had my eyes closed the whole time, and one thing they mentioned was like, the nurse was like, "Oh wow, you have blue eyes." Which
no,
was
this is Ashley. Like, and then like all of a sudden the baby's born, she's like, "Hi, everybody."
Wow,
Hi.
like it really was. It was
like
like night and day. And
a person who had her eyes closed for like 4 hours, like didn't open them once in like 4 hours, and then was just like
so focused.
Hi.
So it was like night and day, and he was born. We were so excited. This was our first, and so to us, we're like, he's beautiful. He looks perfect.
I was like, he's not crying.
He's not really crying. Wow, he's so just like
a quiet baby.
Quiet. But of course, we started to notice the nurses being a little nervous and really taking a close look at him. They kept telling us, he really should be crying more, or we kind of noticed he seems a little laborious
wheezy,
breathing and wheezy. So rub his back really hard, pat his bum, move him around. It was so funny because I'm like, oh, he's just laying on me so wonderfully. Like, why are we trying to agitate him? But we were trying to do everything we could to get him to cry. I think partly because that may have helped him get any fluids out.
Because remember, babies are in like liquids, so like they don't really breathe. So if they breathe in liquid, they got to get it all out of those lungs.
We had him in the delivery room with us for, I look back on the pictures and the timestamps, and it was 2.5 hours.
Didn't feel that way.
Did not feel that way. We are very grateful for that time we did have.
Absolutely. We had,
I
pictures,
got to hold him.
we got to hold him. Our families got to hold him.
No.
Our
I
parents?
didn't, because
No?
that was one thing I was very like, oh, I wish we had had our parents hold
Oh.
him, because it was just, that's what I said,
I
it
have
didn't
terrible
feel that
memory.
long, because I felt like I got to hold him a little bit, then you got to hold him a little bit, then they took care of him a little bit.
But you remember they did like his APGAR scores, they did all that, which surprisingly his APGAR scores were very
Really
high.
good. Yeah, because he was just under 8 pounds. He looked like a very healthy baby otherwise. But in looking back on pictures now and having seen Dennis born, I see where it was like, oh,
Yeah.
okay, there did look like there was something wrong. He did look too lethargic. He wasn't, and he just almost looked a little like grayish.
So after about 2.5 hours of us having him, the NICU did come down, the nurse from the NICU. They said they were going to bring him up to take a look at him, because the NICU's a few floors away in the hospital. So me and my mom went with the nurse up to the NICU, while Ashley stayed obviously in the maternity ward, having just given birth, or delivery room, having just given birth. And I just remember that whole time to me was a blur. We went, like, I didn't really understand what was going on. They kept it very light. They didn't want to, I think, panic us. So they kept going like, oh yeah, we're just going to take a look at him. We're going to do this. But every minute I could tell it was getting a little bit more serious, to the point where then he was put on an intubator, ventilator, and, or he was intubated and put on a ventilator. I don't know if that's the right terminology.
Right. We're not perfect on that, so please keep that in mind.
We probably used a lot of wrong terms along the way. But to help him breathe. And that's when we kind of learned that he had that meconium that was in Ashley's water when it broke. He had inhaled some of it into his lungs. And because, like I said, it's a thick, tarry, sticky substance, his lungs were trying to go like this, but they were sticking, so they weren't getting big. So they had to treat that. And luckily my mom was with me, and that's important because my mom was a nurse. So she was able to understand a lot of the lingo and the jargon that doctors and nurses use, and help me kind of understand what was going on, because, you know, they were very busy and I couldn't quite get an answer. So my mom was just kind of listening in and translating for me, which was very helpful.
It was huge.
And then we were up there for probably, I want to say, an hour.
Maybe, yeah.
And then I went back down to find Ashley, but Ashley was not in the delivery room anymore.
Right. So at that point, shortly after you had left, I made the transition to the maternity ward. And it was a little sad, because there was something when we got a tour and everything that they, you know, shared, that you get to press a little button, and throughout the whole hospital a little lullaby plays, just a short little lullaby, and it signifies that a baby and his mom or parents, or just a baby, has been moved out of the delivery room and into the maternity ward. So I remember feeling sad that I wasn't able to do that, and just worried about them. But at the same time, I still thought he was going to be right back. I was like, all right, I'll just meet them there at the maternity ward. So I waited. I remember everything was very light in our room. I was just talking to my mom, we were laughing, and then you came, and I was like, hi.
And I remember trying to be very, not panic Ashley, and kind of be strong, because I was starting to not freak out inside, but like I was very nervous. I was very unsure of what was going on, but I didn't want to have that pushed onto Ashley. I wanted her to kind of understand it, but I wanted, you know, to help ease it, and not make her overwhelmed having just given birth. So yeah, I would kind of let you know that he was going to be up there. It seemed like for a while, but we didn't really know how long. Like, we didn't know if it was like a few hours or like a day or what.
I think at that point when you came down, it did seem like it was going to be overnight.
Yeah.
So I remember being a little bit like, wait, what? I was not expecting that, but you delivered it perfectly. I do remember you being a little bit emotional, and because I could tell you were a little scared, but you were so good at, you know, sharing it with me and making sure I felt calm and as comfortable as we could. But yeah, things started to get scary from that point.
Yeah. One thing when we found out we were having a baby is you have to choose which hospital you want to deliver the baby at. And we have quite a few hospitals in the area of varying, I don't know, stars.
Right.
Like, you know, if you're talking about a hotel, 5 stars, 4 stars.
Right.
And they all come with different features. The reason we chose this hospital was because they did have a NICU on site. Even though they're, you know, the room that we were in had like a box cathode ray tube TV.
And I remember when we talked to parents, they said, they're like, oh, that one's, you know, not as luxurious as other maternity wards.
Right. But we were more worried about our baby than ourselves. And looking back on it, I'm very happy we chose that hospital, because the one near us that's got like hotel room standards for like the delivery room does not have a NICU, and their NICU that they partner with that hospital is like 2 hours away. So that meant that if we had delivered at that hospital and the same thing had happened, Lee would have had to have gone 2 hours away to a NICU, and Ashley would have been stuck at this hospital, and it would have not gone well. So looking back in hindsight, that's something that I'm at least, I'm sure you are too, very glad that we made that decision.
Mm-hmm. So then later that afternoon, maybe early evening, we went back up to the NICU. I've not been there yet, so this was my first time. And I have to say, I think even though you had seen him there, we were very shocked and concerned. Just because, not concerned as in like they were doing anything wrong, but more like, oh wow, this does seem more
You start to realize
severe.
the gravity of the situation, I guess, is maybe a way to explain it.
Exactly, because he had wires all over him. He again was intubated. I felt like he was, looking back on pictures and even at the time, thought he was very swollen, and a lot of that is because he wasn't moving a lot, wasn't crying a lot, so those fluids were kind of staying in him. And they had mentioned that, you know, they say a lot of babies lose weight very quickly after birth. He was not losing any weight because he was just retaining all of it. Yeah. So overall, it was heartbreaking to see him the way that he was, and also heartbreaking because of the way all the cords and the way they had him swaddled. We couldn't even hold him. We just tried to have him hold our little pinkies and
hold his little toes.
Love him as much as we could, but also, yeah, just absolutely.
And we were useless at that point. That's kind of the other part that really hurt me, is like, I'm useless. Like, there's nothing I can do to make my baby feel better.
Mm-hmm. And for a while after that, I felt like we continued to feel a little out of control. I know one thing that has to do with maybe my personality is that I am someone that's on the cautious side of not wanting to, you know, stress anyone out, not wanting to speak up too much. And so I was always nervous of like, should I ask to hold him? Is it okay to hold him? You know, can I help with any of the procedures they're doing? You know, not the medical ones per se, but more like the baths and the changing the diapers and things like that.
Yeah, because we didn't get to do any of that, at least for, I feel like a couple days, right?
Mm-hmm. Thanks to the counsel from my mom and Joe's mom, they said, you know, it doesn't hurt to ask. So when I found a good opportunity where it seemed like, again, he was no longer intubated and, you know, it seemed like maybe it was a chance that I could hold him, I asked. And of course, they have a lot going on, so I didn't quite get a straight answer for a while. But then later that night, I did finally, one of the nurses said, oh, hey, would you like to try skin to skin? And I was like, yes, set me up, whatever, I'll do anything. And so I was so excited.
Her face like lit up.
I was so excited. That felt like literally a week that I had not been able to hold my baby, and I think it was 24 hours or something. But that can be a long time when it's not something you're expecting. Mm-hmm. Or just for anyone. So I finally got to do skin to skin, and it was stressful. Because
it wasn't full skin to skin because he had so many wires on him too.
Right. One thing I think we had not mentioned was, of course, he had, you know, EKG set up, but the other thing he had actually were really carefully placed tubes in his umbilical cord, because that was the way they were choosing to feed him. And so that was something that, you know, they kept stressing, like anytime you hold him, like be very careful, it doesn't rip, it could get infected. And so, you know, that's stressful to know. It's not just like an EKG falling off, it's like something that really could harm him. And then he had oxygen coming in through his nose. So all of that for skin to skin made for not the most pleasant experience at first. He did cry a lot, but the nurse was great. This nurse was so great because she was kind, she was caring, but she also was more of an assertive person of like, because I think she could sense me like, oh, let's not do this, like I think he's upset. And she's like, no, let's just keep rubbing him, keep singing, sing to him, do what you need to do, we're gonna make this work. And so we did, and that ended up being a really great experience.
Yeah, Do you think it was only 24 hours? Because he was on the ventilator for like 48 hours, I feel like. At least.
I know, maybe it was 48 hours, but again, it felt like a week.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're right.
One thing about Lee's time in the NICU was, there's points where he was getting worse, and then obviously there were points where he would get better. But I think the first 24 to 36 hours, if you want to talk about it was going up in stress and not going well. And then after about the first 36 hours, every, let's say 8 hours, was just getting better and better and better and better and better. Right. So while it was very overwhelming at first because it kept getting worse and you didn't know how much longer it was going to keep going like that, once it started to get better, it just kept getting better. And that was very comforting to know that as everything kept getting better and better and better and better.
Mm-hmm. And again, I think once he started getting better, some of the nurses I felt like were a little bit more candid of saying, yeah, things were pretty bad for a little bit. Yeah. And I was like, and in hearing them say that again, like the gravity of it really hit me of, yeah, like I did not realize, especially in those first few hours, how scary it was.
Yeah. One thing about the NICU is that they only have certain hours where you can kind of be there, unless you're permanently up there, like living with your baby. So after visiting hours, we would have to go back down to the maternity ward. Which
again, we were thankful was just a few floors down.
Yep.
But there was still work to be done. I had to pump because I was choosing to breastfeed. And so, of course, to get everything started and make sure that, I could breastfeed, I did have to pump, which is when your milk isn't quite coming in yet, is not the most pleasant experience. But we made it work. It wasn't what we were expecting, but you helped me a lot. I remember that.
I remember those nights there, it was a very big bonding time, I feel like, for us, because, it was just the two of us, and we were doing something for our baby, and I know I couldn't do anything, myself, but she was trying her hardest to do what she could do, so I was trying my hardest to support her so she could do what she could do. Mm-hmm. And I just remember we had to do it it was a long process, right? So, mm-hmm. Ashley would pump, and that would take,
45 minutes. Because, you're just trying to get your body used to trying to create milk.
And we would talk while you pumped or other things, and then
we try to look at pictures of him because we didn't have him with us, so that's another important piece.
And then I would clean everything afterwards, and then we would try to go back to bed, and then we'd sleep for an hour and a half, and then do it all again, mm-hmm. all night long.
And I remember again, like I said, with my milk not coming in, it was sometimes it was just these little vials of milk, and Joe was
for 45
making sure to make sure nothing happened to it.
And then I think one of the most heartbreaking things afterwards was didn't even use it.
Because I forget what the first milk is called. It's they called it liquid gold, but I forget the actual term. I'll put it here. They said let's try to get him to have that, and then they kind of just forgot about it. So, but it was again the bonding experience, and he's doing okay now.
Yeah.
And of course, another weird part about being in that maternity ward was that, again, he was not with us. So that was something we had looked forward to for a very long time, and was just very strange to see an empty bassinet next to us.
And even one of the problems I had with the hospital process, nothing against the people who actually worked there, but mm-hmm. they didn't really have a way to tell people that we didn't have a baby with us. So all these people from the hospital come in while you're
constantly
in the maternity ward,
rotating,
paperwork, all these types of things, and they'd all come in and go, oh, where's the baby? And we'd be the NICU. Mm-hmm. But I just thought that was something that could have been solved with a little dot outside the room that was completely inconspicuous, or even if it said baby in NICU, I personally wouldn't have cared.
Right.
But just something to let them know, so they don't just come in, because you're already feeling heartbroken that your baby's mm-hmm. not with you, and when 5 people a day come in your room and go oh, where's the baby? And you're oh. You have
to explain the story over and over and over again.
And it's not their fault. They didn't know. While we were in the maternity ward, and afterwards even, every morning they have rounds at the hospital. And if you watched any show, I'm sure, we watched Scrubs, so we saw it in that show, but all the nurses and the doctors and whoever is in charge will, mm-hmm. Be getting a report on every single patient from all the people involved as to what the past 24 hours were. They'll give their recommendations for the next 24 hours. I would be there with my mom, and this was usually very early in the morning. And, we would listen to what they said, and I would pick up on what I could pick up on, but my mom would always pick up on more because, she was a nurse. And so she would kind of communicate that to me afterwards. It's not really an interactive thing for me, but there was a couple of times, I think maybe we did it 5 times rounds, and I think maybe twice the doctor did ask me if I had any questions, which I appreciated, which I don't think I really ever did. That was definitely an area to learn a lot about what was going on, because the nurses and throughout the day that would come in would only know so much, and would only tell you so much, or they weren't, some of them were only there for like 8 hours, whereas the doctor, he or she, would tell you what had happened over the last 24 hours and what the next 24 hours were going to hopefully be like. So that was interesting.
So standard is that you are in a maternity ward for 2 days. And so after 2 days, I was discharged. And they did not have a bed or anything set up where we could stay with him.
In the NICU.
In the NICU. So that night, we stayed with him the whole day as long as we could. And then after visiting hours, we did go home. But we did ask before we left for them to get a bed, because it wasn't like that was going to be his last night there. We could sense it was.
We sensed it was going to be longer, so we asked if we could get like a cot, a chair for us to sleep on, so we could stay with him.
So we went home. We had their phone number, and I did call it like 3 in the morning or something during one of my pumping sessions just to ask how he was doing. But we did go home, and that was sad. Of course, we wanted to be there with him. We kept thinking, like, did we push hard enough to stay with him? Is there anything we could have done? Are we bad parents for going home? And it's still something that sticks with me. But that was the choice that was given to us, and so we went home. And
we made the best of it, right? We got ourselves as refreshed as possible so that we could be there for him over the next few days. We also got ourselves new clothes and everything, because we'd only packed to be there for 2 days.
It was, again, seeing the bassinet we had set up next to our bed, it was hard to come home to that, but like Joe said, we did make the best of it. And first thing the next morning, we were all packed up and we went right back to make it for rounds that morning. And once we got there, we realized that they were able to accommodate us, and they gave us a small cot that we could stay in. So we did stay with him the rest of the time. As Joe had said before, those first 36 hours were a little bit more intense and touch and go for him.
That's my happy baby. So soft.
Mama did a good job putting me to sleep.
Oh no, he's awake again.
That's just letting him know that his food is done.
Hi. Hi, Lee.
How's Mom doing?
Good. He looks good.
He's the most active, I think, and calm we've seen him.
Good skin color, too.
Yeah.
What? Are you done? You want it back?
I want to eat, Mom.
I know. I know. Come here, come here. There you go. You don't want to keep pushing it up, silly. I love your eyes. They're so beautiful. He also looks way less,
Red?
not even red, just his eyes aren't as wicked puffy.
Yeah.
They're super puffy that day. And they're both on his hands, if you look at them then and now.
Toesies are so cute.
They're so cute. They look long.
And then after that, especially once we were able to come back and stay with him, once I was discharged from the maternity ward, the stress changed from worrying so much about his condition, and it was because we knew, okay, it looks like things are progressing and it's just we have to stay the course. The stress turned to then just now trying to take care of a newborn in an intensive care unit and trying to figure out breastfeeding, all while he is still hooked up the way that he is. They were very good about when we came back of saying, okay, now let's try to include you more in the changing of the diapers and things like that. But of course, we did feel out of control still because, you know, even just dealing with the diapers, being so nervous that it was going to touch his umbilical cord and the wires and everything.
Because he was still being fed through his umbilical cord, so they still had that there. So like you couldn't even pull the diaper up as high as you would normally.
Right. We did try breastfeeding because once he was off of oxygen, they felt like it was worth trying. I will mention that once he was off oxygen, they wanted to make sure he had no trouble eating and breathing at the same time. So they did bottle feed him quite a few times before they felt comfortable in allowing me to try nursing.
Oh my goodness, tell me all about it. Tell me all about it. You just see him kind of latch to it. I don't know, but I'm gonna keep. Give him a couple drips.
I appreciate it.
He got a couple drips and he just stopped for a second, kind of like,
what was
that?
that?
What is this good stuff? What is good
Oh,
stuff? Oh my goodness. Is this good or is this good? There he goes.
And he's breathing while doing it.
Yep, he's doing beautifully. Initially, I did a little bit. Sometimes we kind of do a little bit of pacing.
Yeah.
But he seems to, he's very, very coordinated. That's the thing that I sometimes worry about with some kids with their first bottle feeding.
Yeah,
but he gets an A+ from me.
Awesome.
He does. You're ahead of the class. He's just kind of savoring it right now. He stopped for a second and he's giving me the look of, this is sheer bliss.
Like, what am I going to feel full? He doesn't know what that feels like.
Yeah, kind of.
It's funny how things here, especially in the NICU, all of a sudden they just kind of turn around.
Yeah.
And then, there we go.
And then of course I did try and it was incredibly stressful. It's like one of those moments that sometimes I still kind of feel like I have trauma
PTSD
from.
over.
Right. Because he wasn't comfortable and I wasn't comfortable. He was screaming bloody murder and we tried for like 45 minutes to like hour sessions. And, you know.
And on top of that, Ashley would then have to pump afterwards.
Right.
So like it was a non-stop loop. It was like literally trying to feed Lee, then for like an hour, then like pumping
for an
hour, and then like cleaning, and then it's back to feeding again.
And then you were back to that 3-hour mark.
You had like maybe like 25 minutes between sessions, and that was it. And that includes like sleep. Good luck sleeping.
Yeah. So
champion.
That's one thing I will mention is I did not sleep a lot
at all.
Which
I woke up many times throughout the night, and Ashley was just standing over Lee, singing to him, or something that, you know, she didn't sleep.
Getting a little giraffe. Hard to see that. And that. Let's get the thing here. Looks like Daddy's going to sleep. Good night. Do you need a pillow? All right. There you go. All stuck up in there. You're moving around, little boy. Oh. What was that? Sweet baby boy. I love you. It's January 22nd, 7 o'clock in the morning. It's been a crazy 24 hours as we get used to taking care of you. Well, you have all this stuff on you at the same time, but you've been doing great. We love you, Lee.
Well, because part of it was that there was such little time, I was like, it's just not worth it. And then also because I was just so stressed and worried about him that I had trouble sleeping. And of course, everyone kept telling me, make sure you take care of yourself, make sure you take care of yourself. But it is so hard in that moment. But I would tell any mom that is in this situation to take care of yourself, because, you know, the sleep is not coming anytime soon. So you need to take it any chance that you can, because everyone will be discharged. You'll now be at home. No one's there really to help you, at least overnight. And so you need to be in the best state you can be to take care of your son, your baby, and yourself. So as he continued to progress, kind of on the last day and a half, so this is on day 4, it really just came down to, they mentioned that he was on antibiotics because they wanted to make sure he didn't get pneumonia. He had, again, if I'm saying the term incorrectly, they had to put surfactant through his lungs to make sure they dispelled of all of that meconium. So they wanted to make sure all of that was out. There was no pneumonia. And they also wanted to make sure that I had established a good feeding situation, whether that be formula, breast milk, supplementing, whatever that is. So that was what the last day and a half was, just kind of going through the course of medication and establishing good care. And then on the 5th day, in the morning, we had rounds. And we were kind of on like bated breath. We're like, okay.
Yeah, because you joined me for rounds, right?
Once I was out of the maternity ward, basically, yeah.
Yeah. So, and then they gave us the good news. The doctor did that.
He looked good?
Yeah, he looked good, and that they were going to be sending him home. They just had to wait for a couple of things to go through the system or something like that. Discharge paperwork. Like, we had to wait, I think it was like 3 hours just for someone to come talk to us about being discharged or something.
And same thing happened with dentists. So I was like, okay, it's not just a NICU thing, because every time they're like, yep, you're good to go. And then we're like, awesome. We're expecting like in the next half hour. But it's like, no, oh no, you meant like way later today, because what ended up happening, similar to when he was born, basically he was born in the middle of a huge snowstorm. And then once he was born, it basically stopped up until the day he was discharged. Another big snowstorm was coming, and we were like hoping and praying we would get out beforehand, but we didn't get out till early evening. I remember it was pitch dark. It was pitch dark.
I mean, there was only about an inch and a half on the ground at that point. It was just scary. You have a newborn in your car, and people are driving on snow, and some people aren't good drivers in snow. And even if you're a good driver, doesn't mean someone that's a bad driver is not going to hit you. So, you know, you're a parent of a newborn, you're like trying to protect this thing with everything you got. So we're just inching along on the way home.
Right.
All of this happened before COVID, obviously, because this was like 3.5 years ago. So one good thing about it was that our parents were able to spend a lot of time in the hospital with us, either, you know, helping us stay relaxed or bringing us food care packages, having dinner with us, lunch with us, all that type of stuff. So that was really nice to have them to be able to do that.
Yeah, we're incredibly grateful for that. Both our moms were in the labor and delivery room too, so we're grateful to have that moment with them. It was
three of us, me and both of our moms there.
I didn't see them because my eyes were closed the whole time, but I'm sure they were there now. Of course, we think about all those right now that are having babies, you know, in the NICU, or even just delivering babies during COVID. And, you know, we certainly think and pray for all of you that are going through that, because it is difficult not to have your whole support system there for you. With everything that we've shared, of course, we have talked about, you know, what if this had been different? Could this have helped us? Could we have prevented all of this in some way? All in all, we are so happy that it was 5 days that he was in the NICU, and that we had
only 5
yes, that it was only 5 days in the NICU, and that of course we had a happy ending, and that he came home with us. And again, he is such a happy, healthy boy now. We know that that's not the case for everyone, and that there are NICU angels everywhere, and that, you know, we think and pray for the parents that get to love those beautiful angels. And of course, if you're watching this and you are expecting, planning to have a baby, or having your second, third, fourth baby,
more power to you.
We don't want this story at all to scare you. Everyone's labor, delivery, everyone's story in any regard is different. And this is just ours, and we wanted to share it in case it's something that you have experienced and want to hear how someone else experienced something similar to you, or just want to be a little bit more prepared maybe. And of course, keep in mind, we've had 2 boys and they had very different experiences.
Dennis was in and out of the hospital.
Dennis was in and out, completely different experience, which actually, him being our second, I think made his stay in the maternity ward. We were like so grateful. Every moment we got to have with him in the maternity ward, we're like, oh my God, like this is like what we wanted and had hoped for with Lee. And again, it was pre-COVID, so Lee got to visit him in the hospital.
I was gonna say one other comment that I had on that was that when you're in the maternity ward, there's like at least in the hospital we were at, there's like a room in the middle that's all glass where all the babies are kind of kept, and then all the rooms surround it. And there's always a lot of babies in there because they always ask, do you want a break from your baby? We'll go put him in this room. And we were like, no, we want our baby with us. We didn't get it last time. We want it this time. So it was just interesting that, you know, our baby never ended up in that middle area really, because we wanted to spend as much quality time with him as we could, especially because we'd missed out on it the previous time.
And we got to get newborn pictures with him in the hospital, which was something we had wanted so bad with Lee. So yes, we got to have that story as well. So keep that in mind in hearing both of these stories, that everything can be different. And as much as it's out of your control, do your best to be present and be there for each other if you have a significant other, and be there for your baby. That's our story.
We're sticking to it.
And there is more to it. Of course, once we got home, the fun began, and some of those traumas and post-traumatic stress kind of creeped up here and there, and maybe that's something we can talk more about, and just kind of more of our emotional journey in regards to the NICU. But we figured we'd save that for another video. So for now, we hope that you got something out of this and can love on your babies now and just realize how lucky you are to have them. And yeah, I just want to go hug and kiss Lee right now, but he's not with us.
He's at my parents' house.
Who we're grateful for as well. Yeah. I always like to ask a question or inspire something that you can share in the comments. So for this video, I would love if you feel comfortable to share your story in regards to labor and delivery, or your baby's story, or any health story that you have.
It could even be your own story from when you were born.
Yes, because I was in the NICU.
We've all been born. We all have that story. But yes, you were in the NICU.
I was in the NICU as well. I think I was for 2 weeks, and it was like a whole nother thing.
Because your mom had like the flu, right?
Yeah, they don't know. They never found out what she had, but some kind of virus, and then I seemed to contract it, and that's a whole nother story, but maybe I'll share it. I'm here too. So yes, if you feel comfortable sharing any story you have, I would love to hear it and talk with you more about it. Well, thank you for listening in. Thank you for joining me.
Anytime.
And all right, I think I'm gonna look at pictures of Lee and Dennis, because I can't. They're too cute.